Hey there, and welcome to the Confident Woman Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Brooks. Join me as I sit down and chat with co-hosts, friends, and carefully curated guests and talk about all the things that empower you to become your best and most confident self. So, let's get started. Hey there, and welcome back to another episode. Today, we're diving into a topic that I believe impacts everyone's life, and that is overcoming adversity. We all know how unpredictable life is. At any moment, we're thrown curveballs, and as much as we think or say we're prepared, the inevitable happens. We face challenges, setbacks, and those moments when it feels like the rug has been pulled out from under us. It's easy to get stuck in a place of surviving, going through the motions, feeling overwhelmed by the hurdles in front of us. And this is why today's episode is about shifting from surviving to thriving. It's about learning to navigate adversity with grit and grace and the strength to emerge from challenges even more confident and resilient than before. What I know is that our struggles strengthen and refine us, deepening our understanding of ourselves and others. And even though it might not feel like it at the time, I like to think of it as life's lesson in character building skills. I know it sounds a little bit painful, but it's the endurance that gets us through this. So before we dive in, I want to talk about failure. And failure is one of those words that carries a negative connotation. I know we've all experienced it, and it's one of those words that could just really make us feel anxious inside or like just that tight grip around us. But here's the thing. Failure is a natural part of life. And it's actually a part of the whole process. And without failure, we don't have progress or success. Nobody achieves great things without encountering some bumps along the way. And sometimes those bruises and those bumps, well, we could chalk that up as failure, and we could chalk that up as also loss. But what does that mean in the grand scheme of things? We have to think about it. Every successful person has a story filled with setbacks. Every successful person has a storybook of failures, right? So what is the difference? I believe that the difference is how they view failure as a learning experience and not a roadblock. They use those experiences to build resilience, identify what didn't work, and come back stronger. So how do we shift our mindset and embrace failure as a stepping stone? Well, here's a couple tips that have worked for me, have been proven to be part of the success recipe. And that really is reframe your perspective, right? We have to shift that narrative from that negative thinking into positive thinking. And I don't mean from a place of toxic positivity, but really shifting that perspective. Instead of seeing failure as the end, view it as a chance to learn and grow. We have to ask ourselves, what can I take away from this experience? What has it taught me? What good came from an otherwise bad situation or experience? When we can shift that perspective, we're also shifting the narrative. We're also shifting the way our mind is seeking not from the bad, but to the good. What lessons can be learned that we can bring forward into our next attempt, right? Because really life is a whole bunch of trial and error. Nobody's got to figure it out. And if they say they do, well, that's questionable. I have yet to ever meet any person in this lifetime that has it perfect and all put together. Because that's the human nature. That's the human life. That's the human experience. Is that we're all on this journey together, just trying to do the best we can with what we know. And then when we know better, we do better. So how do we do better? We take inventory of what did and didn't work. We spot out that silver lining, and we seek ways to constantly refine what didn't work the first time so we know now what not to do the second time. That leads into developing a growth mindset. When we have a growth mindset, the curiosity, the wonderment to constantly seek something bigger, something beyond, And that's the growth. If we think of growth, it's expansion. Otherwise, the opposite of a growth mindset is a fixed mindset, where it's very closed off, narrow-minded. We think we know it all. We've got excuses. We've got all the answers. We're uncoachable. We aren't open to new ideas. We're not open to receiving feedback or advice. Otherwise, we seem to think that that's a form of criticism. Well, there's criticism in a way that can be constructive and used for the betterment. So again, we have to look at how are we approaching situations? Are we being very defensive because we're down on ourselves because something didn't work? And we feel like, oh man, that should have worked and I know why it didn't. And we start looking elsewhere outside of ourselves. With a growth mindset, it's about believing in our abilities that we can develop over time. It allows us to challenge our opportunities, stretch beyond ourselves, and build that new skill set. Those character building skills, this is all part of it. It strengthens us from the inside out. We also want to celebrate our small wins. Those little micro wins, those micro steps add up to the macro steps, those big goals, right? So when we look back at our life as a concession, we're able to see the through line from small steps to macro steps to the large steps, right? And it's all part of the journey. So we can't get discouraged when we have those setbacks. Yes, it stings, it sucks. I mean, I'm not going to placate this and pretend that having setbacks is amazing and I welcome all of them. But with those setbacks, we can't get discouraged for long. It's about sitting there in the moment and acknowledging that every small step has led to some sort of a victory. It might not be the victory or the win that you were looking for, but again, go back to the other 2 steps I gave you, refine that perspective in that narrative, because we can look back and see that every small step was leading you to the right direction. So it did have a win and a purpose and a victory for a reason. And this keeps you motivated, right? So when you have those wins, it's the motivation that helps reinforce your progress. We all need that encouragement. We all need that hope. We all need that boost of esteem to keep going, to get up and try again. And when we look at these three tips here, the reframing your perspective, developing that growth mindset, and celebrating those small wins, we need to do that in community. We need to seek community and support. When we're in a place that feels like it's all happening to you, which is real, it's happening, experience that, feel that, embrace it. But don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to voice what you need and lean on that support system. It could be your friends, your family, mentors, coaches, peers, even sometimes ourselves. Like we discount ourselves and think, well, you're the one who got us here. It's about checking in with ourselves, right? We all need that encouragement and that guidance. And if you don't know what you need, confide in somebody close to you who can just simply hold that space. Hold that space to embrace the suck with you, because we're not meant to do life alone. And loneliness is the worst place to be. Well, we're alone in our thoughts, alone in our world, alone in our quote unquote failures. It could feel so isolating and we become withdrawn. And that's not a place where we want to be, because that's not where growth happens. That's not an area where we're able to thrive. And we all need that one person in our life that could just sit in that solitude moment and just simply hold that space, hold your hand, or just hold you. And that is that person. So if you don't have that person, please reach out to me, to somebody in our community. We want to hold that space with you. And sometimes, it's about allowing ourselves the permission that we're worth knowing that there's somebody out there that matters and cares. Just as you could also be the reciprocation of that for somebody else. And that is so, so meaningful and fulfilling. And so when we're able to develop that resilience and embrace those failures as a learning experience, we begin to build on our inner strength and the ability to navigate adversity with grit and grace. When we approach challenges with determination, we learn from them and we become stronger. And so now that's not, again, to say this doesn't mean that you won't stumble or experience moments of doubt. That's inevitable. It simply means you have the awareness, tools, and mindset to overcome those obstacles and keep moving forward despite your circumstances and situations. And if you look back at that, you know you've already won. You're here. You've survived some pretty heavy stuff. And that's something to celebrate. You've come this far and you have enough fight in you to keep on going. So that is something that I want you to really embrace and harness in yourself and just say, wow, I'm so much more stronger and courageous and more confident and more resilient and more badass than I've ever been. Because we will continue to face setbacks and struggles and challenges and all of what life is conditioning us for that. If you almost look at it from a place of weathering the storms, right? We get beat up. There's rain, snow, sleet, hail. I mean, anything and everything that comes through, and it's about weathering that storm because you're still standing and you're still here. And that is shifting from surviving to thriving. So remember, overcoming adversity is not about avoiding challenges. It's about embracing them. It's about having faith in yourself, in your higher power, in knowing that you have gotten through everything that you've survived to this point. And it's developing that strength and resilience for you to face them head on next time they come. Throughout our lives, we'll all face the adversity, all adversity. So it's inevitable. God gives us the strength we need to get us through each new day. So my hope is that this episode is a reminder that you have His power within you to turn your challenges into opportunities for growth. So let's learn from our setbacks and thrive in the face of adversity. And remember that our setbacks are setups to come back stronger, more resilient, and more confident than ever. You've got this. So I invite you to share your stories of overcoming adversity inside the Confident Woman community. I invite you to check out our community itself. Make connections. That's what we're here for. Share, connect, learn. We inspire each other through our actions, through our words, through our experiences. So let's support each other on this journey. And don't forget to subscribe to this episode or share this episode, subscribe to the Confident Woman podcast. And hopefully you're enjoying the content and the strategies that we put out here every single week to empower you to become your best and most confident self. So until next time, take care. Hey there. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of the Confident Woman podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode as much as I did, please be sure to like, subscribe, and leave us a review. Thanks again for listening.